Welcome to Order Militaris Radio TV, and today is our weekly program on restoring the politics back to the Christian faith. And there was a time in America when things were good. Things were open, free, you could say wild, but food tasted better, water tasted better, life was better. And that is what we propose in the Catholic Party of America. Not to destroy the country, but to bring it back to how it should be. And any words on that, Brother Alexis?
Thank you, AJ, for having me on again for this program. This is a wonderful topic to talk about every week. I'm a bit older than you, AJ, so I have some experiences from before your time. And I remembered when you could sell lemonade on your front lawn and you didn't have to fear anything other than that no one would come and buy it. But you know, as soon as they saw a little kid saying lemonade in his front, all your neighbors would come out, people would come down the street, everyone would stop and say, "I'm going to buy some lemonade from this kid because he's raising money for something." And it was a joy to do, and the world was honest. You didn't have to fear about it. Then I remembered, because my father read the New York Times daily, it was in the New York Times that this girl in New York State was arrested by the IRS for not collecting sales tax on her lemonade, and it sent shockwaves to all the young people. It was like, this is not America. And IRS didn't give up on it. They pummeled it, and now you don't see any kids selling lemonade in the front yard. And you don't see anyone selling anything on the front yard. They're afraid of tax evasion. You still see maybe some yard sales now and then, but
yeah,
even the yard sales have changed. People would come and say, you know, do you have any old plates or something like that? Now they'll come to yard sale and say, are you selling gold and silver coins?
mm-hmm.
I don't know why they think you'd sell that at the yard sale. Oh boy. So yeah, America has changed. Innocence is gone. I remember when I was a little kid, we went trick-or-treating. No one worried about anything. Even if you were out to midnight, your parents weren't worried about you. You know, you stayed in the neighborhood, but there was just nothing. It was like a carefree, innocent world. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
you're in a monastery cloister. Nothing's going to bad happen to you. And then the stories came out where people were putting razor blades inside of apples, candied apples, or drugs inside of the candy. And it was like the kids started disappearing in the street. Their parents weren't going to let them out anymore. And you didn't go to certain houses because they looked suspicious, and the innocence of youth was just gone. The beauty of the country was gone. And these are just things I remember as a kid in the 70s. Those who are much older than me can remember how things were never like this in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And this country has gone downhill morally since the Second World War. And we'll discuss that, why that is, in our Friday program. But there has been a foreign influence brought to America, and it's been here for 200 years, to break down Christian society. America won its revolution, but it was immediately targeted by Freemasonry, and now we are seeing the complete revelation of their religion of psychosis, madness, and revolution. Cities are burning down, and you know, they're renovating the Rose Garden. Mm-hmm. People mock Nero for playing his fiddle while Rome burned, but this is, you know, right up there with it, you know, and everyone says, oh, save him. You got to vote for him. He's going to save America. If saving America means letting the cities burn down, I don't know. The people have gone mad. You've gone, if you say that man's saving America, you too are mad. Mm-hmm. You too are mad. And this is the effect of the propaganda machine. Yeah. And that's why we need to go back to sanity. And we're only going to find sanity in our Christian faith, because this is spiritual warfare. This is not just madness. This is madness from evil ideas and people who are just possessed with their own evil desires,
Yeah.
don't represent America at all. They might get votes, but they don't represent America.
Hmm. Yeah. Before we touch on what policies, platforms I've written down that we're going to cover, something was in the news that it was either the USDA or I think it's the same organization that moved the Indians to the reservations are still around, and they're asking the federal government to raise bison for the bison buffalo for the Native Americans again on on certain on certain small patches of land. But these people are idiots. Buffalo don't raise or graze on small patches of land. They're made for wide open country. They migrate from to where it's warm to where it's cold, back and forth. And sure, sure, people don't want to have hoof print divots in their front yards or whatever in on the farm, but there should be lots of wide open spaces just for buffalo to return throughout the country because there is nothing more American than seeing the charge of the buffaloes.
That was one of the great ecological disasters of the 19th century, the extermination of the three species or subspecies of buffaloes in the West. And I know when I was a kid, you could just wander through the countryside as a kid. You could go walking all day and come back, you bring a backpack with your lunch, and you never had to worry about it. Then all of a sudden, everyone started putting up fences. And now you can't go anywhere. These barbed wire fences all over the place, like signs saying "Don't trespass." What has happened? And that's not just in the United States now; it's even here in Europe. Um, you know, that's a degradation of reality. That's not what reality is. The fact that someone walks across your field is not trespassing. Okay, what's he going to do to your field? Oh, he put his foot on it. That's like a great damage. So uh, things are just absurd. It's an absurd Pharisaism that is just based on greed and avarice and vice. And once you get rid of the Christian order, you have no morality left. So the laws no longer, which were founded in Christian times, just no longer have any consistency. And so they start like, getting like cancer. They just grow bigger and bigger and bigger until they kill the body politic. And this is what we're having. Washington is a cancer. The political
Mhm.
parties of the Democrats, Republican are cancers. Neither of them can save the country. Neither of them want to save the country. Neither of them even know what it means to save the country. And and mark my words, if a Christian party gets strong in this country, both will unite together against it, because that's their real motivation, is to destroy Christianity and destroy America.
Yeah.
However, much platitudes they do. So the Christian party of America is the salvation of America, because Christ is the salvation of America, and the Christian party is nothing more than putting Christian teaching and common sense back into law and order and to government. And this is what our weekly show is about. And AJ and I do this as private citizens,
Yep.
expressing our private opinions, but to also invite you to join the party and become active. And we'll talk about that at the end of the program, how you can do that.
First first policy platform thing is draining the swamp at the FDA or Federal Department of Agriculture. When food was seeming to become scarce during the scamdemic of COVID-19, when eggs, flour, milk, chickens were being destroyed and punished the farmers who decided to sell directly to the people, all members of the FDA who allowed this to happen and who punished the farmers should be sent to prison for life. Their actions were on par with Joseph Stalin and the Holodomor genocide in Ukraine, whereby the authorities of the state to starve the people. We do need food checkers to make sure food is safe, but not at the expense of starving people. We must return to Christian ethics and principles. Make sure this does not happen again. Oh, since there are Christian families from Ireland, Scotland, and other parts of Europe who want to try the food of their ancestors, traditional method of food preparation and fresh small-scale delivery production should be allowed.
I totally agree. You know, let's talk about the crazy Masonic way of government and the Catholic way of government. So, in the crazy Masonic way of government is you can't sell pickles unless they're in a jar, pasteurized with certain chemicals added, made in a factory that's certified, authorized, and inspected, and has the Board of Health permission in the local town and the federal FDA permission. And once you have that entire process, then you can sell those pickles.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. So who can sell pickles? People from Wall Street can found companies to sell pickles, but Farmer Jones cannot sell his pickles. Okay. Because obviously he doesn't have tens of millions of dollars to build a factory like that and get all those inspections, and to pay for the inspector, you'd have to be selling pickles to half the country, you know. Here's the Catholic method of pickles. The government has to prove my pickle's unhealthy, otherwise I can sell it. See how different that is? Now the burden's on the government, it's not on me. Did anyone get sick from my pickles? No, then I have the right to sell them the way I've been selling them, and my grandfather's been selling them, and we've been doing this for generations. And see, that's Catholic sanity. It's also less burdensome, not only to the producer, but also to the government. Because the government's not going to, what's the inspector have to know if your pickle's healthy? Come to your thing, take a pickle and eat it. Oh, this tastes good, it's fine, I don't get sick, you're fine.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't come by and inspect your pickles, that's not your fault. That's his fault, okay? He has to prove they're unhealthy to stop you from selling it. You have the right to sell it until you're proven guilty otherwise. So, and we have that as a general principle. You're presumed innocent until you're proven guilty. Why isn't this true of food? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's basic Catholic thing. And that will change everything in the food industry. It will return food production back to the people and not to corporations that want to produce things like Wonder Bread. It's a wonder it's called bread because it's not really bread. I don't know if you know, but Wonder Bread is not made of flour, it's made of barley malt. And that's why it's not bread. It wouldn't classify bread in any Catholic definition of the word.
I wonder there's nothing there.
That's why there's nothing there. So it's called Wonder Bread. And and that's why barley malt is a sugar. And so when you eat Wonder Bread, you just get overweight because it's just like eating slices of sugar that are fluffed up to make it look like bread. So that's true of everything. So why do I need all these inspections of my cattle if my cattle's healthy? You have to prove my cattle aren't healthy. Is there some disease for cattle in my area? Okay, well then the government should take out. But if there's no reports of any disease of any cattle in the area, why would there even be a government inspection? Okay, then where on earth does the FDA get the authority to inspect food? The federal power is only about things going between states. Until the cattle crosses the border, it doesn't come under federal inspection. It just doesn't. And it would have to be sick. So you'd eliminate all these controls. You could open up butchery houses, slaughterhouses, canning facilities all across the country, low scale, producing food locally. So if we ever do have a national disaster, we don't have our food supply interrupted because we have food production facilities in our own town, which is just common sense. Why should food be prepared 5,000 miles away when it can be prepared in town?
Yeah.
I have some relatives that live in New England, and we went down into the local city, which is on the railway line. And I was amazed, we were visiting a museum. I was amazed to find out that in that town, a century ago, that if you ordered meat, that meat was slaughtered like 3 days before because the cattle were shipped in on train from Kansas City, and the butcher got the cow live off the train and slaughtered it in his butcher shop. okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you had fresh meat. You didn't have an animal that was slaughtered who knows where and hung up how no long and, you know, injected with you know what. Uh, and is there any stories of people getting sick from eating meat in that town in the 19th century? No. Okay, so this is the big difference between Catholic politics and Masonic politics. And if whether you're a Christian or a libertarian or just common sense or you're pro small government or just pro business, you're going to say, wow, that's radical because it's a totally different principle. We could get rid of the Department of Agriculture and the FDA, um, um, or at least reduce them to such small entities and then put them part of the Justice Department. You only be there for criminal activities, you know.
Yeah.
And then the states should be inspecting food. That's their authority, their sovereign, not the federal government. I don't see, there's nothing in the Constitution saying the federal government should be inspecting food.
I mean, that is just amazing process to watch. Growing up, the kids were allowed to go into the back room of the butcher shop. You'd see the cow brought in. You see it put down humanely, and you see it slaughtered and skinned and everything. You see it go into the next room where it's hung up to chill it. So after it's all done, getting done, and after it's been done in there for in a deep freeze for a few hours, you see it brought out. You see it cut into steaks. You see the different types of meat come out of it. Then when it's ready, you take that meat home.
Mm-hmm. And but what do we have today? We have children growing up in cities who think milk comes from a carton. They don't even know it comes from a cow.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know how it comes from a cow. They don't know what end of the cow it comes out of. So, and the reason why Masonic state does it this way, because the Masonic Lodge wants to control society from top down. So they pass laws making what the common man does illegal and allow only the wealthy elites to do it. And so they control everything. And so they can control everything about what you eat and drink and hear and see and do and work at. And that allows them to shut the country down and control it according to their twisted, perverted, psychotic view of the world. And this is why Christian politics would wipe away all these laws, because we want true, natural freedom for the people, common sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have a brain just like the people in Washington. So why should their brain rule you? Aren't you competent enough to know what's good for you? And if you get sick from eating your own food, that's your decision, you know. And
Yeah.
if a farmer puts out pickles that get people sick in the area, that's the town's duty, the Board of Health, to intervene. It's not the FDA. And if people have no problem with Farmer Jones's pickles in you know Oakdale, Arkansas, he should be able to ship those pickles anywhere in the country. And if people have a problem with that, then they can go to court with him. Why does the government have to intervene, say, you know, has to do it this way, you know?
Yeah.
And anyone with common sense could say, well, you know, this tastes off. I'm not going to eat it, you know? You know, that's, you know, and we won't even get into all the chemicals the FDA, in the name of protecting food, allows to be injected in animals or put in foods, which is just absurd. Dyes and preservatives.
Mm-hmm.
How is that protecting food, you know? You know, all the foods today, they're put in plastic containers. Well, it's just absurd. You know, they should be in glass because glass is neutral. It's the best thing you can store food in. But plastic, you know, I remember when I was little, you went to the Italian market and everything was wrapped in paper. He'd wrapped it in wax paper, then he'd wrapped it in paper, and then he tied it up with string. And you came back with all these packages tied up in paper, and it was all biodegradable. There wasn't a bit of plastic in it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have to sort your garbage out, I don't know if you've noticed, but about 60% of your garbage is plastic. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
ridiculous. And you don't see paper anymore, and those trees growing all over the place. I don't know what they do with this paper.
Mm-hmm. Let's honor some cowboys. Honoring the forgotten, you fed America with beef. We would remember and have statues of cowboys and monuments made to honor what they did, especially on Chisholm Trail, and reopen it, allow people to experience it, and have meals the traditional way, cooked on a chuck wagon. In Kansas, there should be monuments in Abilene, Wichita, Dodge City, and in Chicago, and even Seattle, yes, even in California byways of Southwest Texas.
This is part of the fact that there are not such monuments is not by random happenstance. It's part of the Masonic idea of putting before your eyes only their heroes. You can't put the common man, because if you start idolizing the common man, you'll resist their control. Okay, and definitely you can't put the common man as a Christian. Okay, and you see this degradation even in military cemeteries.
Mm-hmm.
If you go outside of Rome here, and I've been many times to the American cemetery at Anzio, you will see at every grave a white cross where there's a Christian, and where there's a Jew, then there'll be a Star of David. And it's a beautiful white marble cross. Well, if you see any pictures coming out of Iraq or Afghanistan of buried soldiers, what is it? It's a rifle with a helmet on top of it. They've totally done away with the cross.
Mm-hmm.
That is totally Masonic. Okay, it's also an insult to the dead, and that is not happenstance. That is intentional. Okay, and that's the way they break down even the concept of remembering the past. They don't want let's not even talk about all the lawsuits against to take down mangers and take down crosses. Alabama, they had in front of the Supreme Court of Alabama this monument to the Ten Commandments, or maybe I think it was inside the building. They had it for more than 100 years. And then there was this lawsuit, and the Supreme Court itself decided that it shouldn't be there. Well, you know, if you're a judge and you're saying the Ten Commandments shouldn't be there shouldn't be a monument of them in your courthouse, then you've just undermined any authority you have to make any judgment whatsoever. Because saying law doesn't come from God. Well, if it doesn't come from God, it certainly doesn't come from man.
Mm-hmm.
If God doesn't have authority to pass law, neither does man. And that spirit is from hell, okay, because he is against all law.
Yeah.
So yeah, we need to honor not just the cowboys, all the famous Americans. You know,
Mm-hmm.
occasionally you'll see a monument to like the Minutemen of the Revolution, but you don't see many monuments to the actual famous men of the Revolutionary War. It's very, very few. The government has spent $1 trillion in Afghanistan, but the federal government has never spent money to build monuments to famous Americans around the country, not even in our national parks. You know, where are these monuments?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, the Chisholm Trail is southeast of where I live. And you go right past a little plaque saying you're now on the Chisholm Trail, or you're next to it, but you don't really see it. There's nothing actually there. And so I was thinking, what what's the best way to teach history? Live it. Open it up again. Let the people experience it.
That would be a beautiful kind of like a national trail. They could call it a national park. Line it with like the white stones on the edges of it. Make it a public right of way, and let wagons, like companies that do a historic recreation, do like a wagon train on it, and people could sign up and go for the experience. That would be a wonderful way to help people connect with the past, connect with their ancestors. I think you probably could rightfully say that almost everyone west of the Mississippi has some relative that went on the Chisholm Trail or survived the Chisholm Trail.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not just something, and not just the Chisholm Trail, we could talk about the Oregon Trail. I think that's a bit better marked, but not for its entire length. And these are core parts of American history.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think we should add also there should be some kind of monument to the Indian tribes. Okay, they suffered a lot of persecution in the 19th century, but if you go to any place in the East where once belonged to a tribe, there is no monument to them. This was once their capital. This is where they once lived. This is how they lived. A few
Mm-hmm.
tribes now with casino money are building something, but this thing should not be forgotten, that the Indian tribes once lived there and how they live. And people need to bury the hatchet and understand the great achievements of the people who lived here for millennia before white man came.
Yeah.
Not to mention all the injustices. I think we've talked about. There needs to be some tribunal, but all these things need to be remembered. History needs to be remembered. People need to remember that Texas was once Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
and it was well. I'm not. I'm Catholic, and I'm not from Texas. So if there's any Texans out there, don't be offended what I'm about to say. How it was stolen from men from Kentucky and Tennessee, and the Alamo was a Franciscan convent, before it became a fortress. And this is all part of the beauty of American history, that like the first settlement in North America was on near Galveston, Texas. It was by the French. Most people don't know that. That's where the word bison comes from. The French saw the buffalo and they said bison, they called it.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things should be remembered. Why we're spending trillions of dollars in funding the military industrial establishment that doesn't do anything with their stuff when we could be building up the history, the culture, the people of America, making America a place where we understand where we've come from, and so we don't forget it. And that's very important. And that would be an essential part of the Christian party, because it's essential to Christianity to remember and
Yeah.
never forget.
And if and with the FDA and all those health food rules are, there is no way a chuck wagon would be. You would not have artisan cooking on a trail. I mean, they used everything. They even had certain parts of the herd picked out that was just traveling with them for food. And when it was time to butcher, they butchered it and they used the suet that turns into cooking grease to cook the biscuits or chicken fried steak with all the trimmings or the refried beans and
And not to mention like the internals that used to be eaten are very healthy for
hmm
you. And you need to eat the hearty food when you are on things like the Oregon Trail, the Chisholm Trail, because not everyone rode all the time. A lot of people walked. And if you're walking 10 miles a day and you don't eat hearty food, you're just going to wither away. I don't care how heavy you are, you just absolutely wither away. So hearty food is healthy for you. And forget what the FDA says about calories and fat. It's just absolutely baloney. Has to do with the activity of life you have. And if
hmm
you're working hard, you need to eat very good. And that's why when Catholics ruled the world, there were none of these laws about what you could eat and what you couldn't eat. That's a mentality that comes from the Talmud more than that comes from the Gospels.
yeah.
Because God made all these foods good, and many of them we need to eat, and we don't eat them in modern times, and we get all kinds of health problems from it.
You would see. I mean, you'd be like, they made that out of a wagon. Oh yeah,
Yeah. Okay. We won't even get into the crazy kitchen rules that you have to have like a $50,000 kitchen before you make a pot of pasta and sell it to the public. That's just totally ridiculous. If your kitchen at home is made food for people and no one gets sick, then you should be able to sell that at the curb.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why do you need a specialized kitchen? That is just a trick to force you to buy stuff from an industry that should be only making stuff for restaurants, not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And there's crazy laws, like in Texas, you can't sell food from a building where there is a bedroom. In Texas, you cannot have the working staff live upstairs. They can't be any residences in the restaurant, and that was to prevent the poor from starting a business, because throughout all of Europe and many parts of even the eastern United States, immigrants would rent room upstairs and open up a shop below and run a business. And many times they'd start by just cooking food and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
that was how they got on their feet and started a business. And they brought the beautiful blessings of their culture and the culinary arts of their nations to America so that anyone could taste them.
Mm-hmm.
And people didn't get sick. It was beautiful. But you have some crazy states, they have these laws that, no, you can't do that. Can't have ethnic cooking. That's, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's worse than satanic possession and burning your cities down.
I can't believe the Texans actually allowed that law to be passed, because that's how it was back in 1800s. You had the restaurant down below, then the hotel up top. That's where you get the word cafe from.
Hmm. It's in a way that it's outlawing the past, because all these groups that want to enslave people, the first thing they have to do to enslave you is make you forget that you and your people were once free. So they have to get you to forget the past. The Marxists, the Freemasons, the fascists, the Nazis, they're all into forgetting the past, because they need to detach you from the past so then they could remold you. And the globalists are doing the same thing with this mask rule. They want you to forget that you once were able to go outside and breathe the air without a mask on. They're trying to make it a new form of humanity where you will always have that mask on your face, and it will kill you. But they're intent on absolute changing of society, and these people need to be moved from power. They are psychotic.
Mm-hmm.
And in a Christian party, a politician ordered that would get the death penalty, because he's trying to kill tens of thousands of people all at once, millions.
Mm-hmm.
And that is more crazy than Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler didn't even make the Jews in the concentration camps wear masks all the time and suffocate them to death. Even he wasn't that crazy. Not even Stalin or Mao was that crazy.
Uh,
So don't say I didn't mean it. Oh, these people are much better than Hitler, Stalin, and Mao.
yeah. Oh, now on to setting up two review boards. First one is review of certain cases that did not get full and true justice. An independent, non-biased review of cases such as Billy the Kid and those involved in the Lincoln County War, and see if it was truly Lawrence Murphy and his cronies who should have been charged instead, and any other cases where Wild West courts didn't truly give justice but was corrupted by those who own the town.
Hmm. Yeah, so we have federal courts, but why they don't do this? We have federal prosecutors. Why don't they do this? And this is because the federal court system and even our state governments are organized by Freemasons to support the lodge, and they get what they want. You don't get justice. So obviously, the Christian Party of America wants, if it would win the elections and get control of government, that would be one of the first things to do. We have to restore justice, and therefore we have to go back through the history of America and point out all the injustices worked by the Masonic Lodge, and justice has to be done, okay? Lands that were stolen have to be given back, and honest people need to have their name cleared. And this is entirely different of the concept of slave reparations. Slave reparations was where you take money from the innocent and you give it to the guilty. The people promoting slave reparations never want to punish the Democratic Party, which was the one that promoted slavery. I'm totally in favor of slave reparations. If by that you mean all the slave owning families that are in the Democratic Party now have to give up all their wealth, I'm totally in favor of that. But that's a Catholic concept of reparations, which, you know, they don't have, obviously, because what they want is to destroy things. They want to take your state back and give it to an Indian tribe as a way of making up for some past injustice, but only because they want everyone in the state to vote Democrat, or they want you to lose your ability to vote. It's not because they care about the Indians. And so there are peaceful ways of resolving these things, but they're all just ways too. And justice needs to be done in many of these cases. Like in Maine, they did win rights back, but the tribe that won was the tribe of St. Francis, and they're a Catholic tribe. And they didn't, the state court gave them 2/3 of the state. They said, we don't want 2/3 of the state. That would disrupt the lives and inheritances and the property rights and the businesses of everyone in the state, and we don't want to make them our enemy. We'll settle out of court. And they settled out of court for a very modest sum of $60 million, which was not even a fraction of what the state was worth. Industrious people, they took that money, they bought a bankrupt cement factory, the whole tribe got together and they fixed that thing up, and they sold it in a few years for like 500 million. So now the tribe of St. Francis is pretty well off. They have their own social welfare program, and they take care of their members. And that is a wonderful Catholic solution to the problem, and they give a wonderful witness. And they're American Indians, you might call them, but they're Catholics. So they're imbued by the faith, and they're put the Catholic faith into their tribal sense of traditions that came down from before Columbus, and sought justice in court and won. And a wonderful example. So yeah, we need to rectify. There are some things, for example, the War of 1848. We went to war with Mexico, so we claimed they were on the wrong side of the border. They weren't on the wrong side of the border. So that actually was an unjust war. So there has to be some kind of reparations there. And the Spanish-American War, that we went to war against Spain because our ship blew up in the harbor of Cuba. It turns out it blew up on its own. It wasn't mined by the Spanish, though. And that war was done to destroy the sovereignty of a Catholic power. So I'm not saying that we give back the territories, but something has to be rectified. There has to be some acknowledgement. Like after the War of 1848, a lot of Catholic families that owned tracts from the Spanish crown in Mexico, in New Mexico, in Arizona, and California, had all their lands taken from them. And they were only years later, they received some fraction of compensation. I don't know why we're throwing $1 trillion away in Iraq. It has nothing to do with the United States. We could compensate those families more fairly now. The government is certainly that wealthy. So you can see that this injustice against the poor, the Christians, the native peoples, it's always in favor of the lodge and the wealthy families. They never have to pay the slightest penalty. They're never dragged into court. They're completely immune. And that's just totally unjust.
Yeah. The second independent review board would be on the Pentagon. Now, where the heck is all this missing money going to?
Yeah. We need a law that says if you've misappropriated $1 million in government service, you should get the death penalty. That law would get rid of a lot of corruption. Considering that more than 2.2 trillion is missing from the Pentagon, a lot of heads would roll. Even if we gave them 100 years in jail for every $1 million stolen, a lot of people in jail until the end of time. And you need to have justice, otherwise you have complete theft.
Yep.
I don't know if it's true, but it's said that right where that plane on 9/11 went into the Pentagon was the accounting office, and all the records of where they misspent the money just happened to be destroyed. You know, so.
Next. Breaking up and ending power control of the social media and search engine giants. This is from Tucker Carlson tonight, September 5th, 2020. These left-wing billionaires are a danger to the American people, to the rule of law, and to the nation. By them using their power to attack, to censor, and to decide what is truth or not is and should be illegal. It is not only time to regulate and monitor these corporations, but to break them up, to end their power hold in this country and globally. There is nothing illegal about being rich, but there is something illegal thinking you can control the entire information in search results or in social media for the entire world. That is a crime against humanity and the basic human rights given to us by God to learn, to know the truth, and to share it. These Marxists who hate this country, but made enormous amounts of cash in this country, all the fines, penalties of supporting terrorist organizations while silencing Christian organizations will go to help pay off the national debt, and they will have to cough up ownership of these social media and search engine companies. No one with any bias or political interest should be allowed to run such a company. Also, once proper non-biased new owners of these tech companies are found, yes, regulation to make sure they are only used for good and honest work. Never allow the enemy or political trolls on it ever again.
I totally agree. We've talked about before when we were talking about vaccines that there needs to be boards of directors in any company that requires a highly sensitive specialty like medicine, and now we're going to talk about social media, should be people who are ethically competent, because otherwise the organization becomes criminal. And just like Bill Gates should never be allowed to invest in vaccines or sit on the board of directors of any vaccine company or make any statements on medicine without being arrested for it for malpractice, and he's guilty of so much malpractice. Likewise in social media. Facebook is a huge company. Now, I think Zuckerberg should be removed from Facebook. I don't think he deserves any of that wealth. He stole the ideas from his friends. So, kick him out and give him $10 million. But the assets of the company should still belong to the stockholders. The government could acquire his portion of it in payment of all his crimes. And then only allow on the board of directors people who are certified experts in information transparency, rights of free communication, and privacy, because that information should not be used by anyone, not even the government, and no government should have a back door into it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with all social media platforms, because we have to see them they're as utilities. They've become utilities of life, and therefore they should not be under the private control of anyone, even if they are public companies and have stock and can make profits. There's nothing wrong about that. So we don't have to nationalize them, but the boards of directors should have special rules, and investors shouldn't be able to choose unethical people to sit on the boards of directors and run those companies, let alone work in the departments. Many of these corporations have hired the most extreme, radical leftists to monitor the profiles of everyone, to read the most private conversations. That should be totally forbidden. Anyone working in the company should be completely political neutral or highly ethical. And these people should not be allowed to work in these corporations. That means you have to clean out pretty much Silicon Valley and most of the employees of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these social media platforms, because they might have been brilliant enough to write the software and come up with the idea, but they're not ethically competent to run the product once it is operating. And that, we need to make that distinction, because and when you're involved with public relations, if your product is being sold to that quantity of people and they're using it that much daily, it's entered into the public forum and you don't have control of that. Okay. Just like if you design a bicycle, you cannot say who rides it. Okay, you can sell bicycles, but once you've sold your bicycle, you can't tell the person how to ride that bicycle or where to ride it to, because now it is a vehicle, it's in the public forum, it's under the domain of the jurisdiction of the state, not of the company that made the bicycle. Same thing with any social media. okay, you have the code and you're running the platform, but since it's entered the public domain, you can't tell people how to use it. It's the government, and it's the Constitution says these are the rights of free speech. And if a company violates that, those people should go to jail for life, or they should lose their citizenship. And that would stop this sort. And they should not allow foreigners to work in their company. It should only be American citizens, and they should have security clearances.
Yeah.
And they should be under such bonded penalty that if they violated the privacy of anyone, the company would have to pay millions of dollars for even the most smallest violation. Because otherwise, these are not tools for social communication, they're tools for social manipulation, and that power cannot be in the hands of a few people, or we won't have a free democracy.
Yep. Properly taking care of wounded veterans. Since the swamp of the Veterans Association hospital system can't truly be drained, it will need to be fully abolished and restarted properly. Competent doctors and nurses who will not abuse the wounded veterans, and the time for appointments and surgeries will not be days, weeks, or months. But when the veteran needs to see their doctor, they just go. With the reforming of all things healthcare, medicine, medical equipment, prices, the outrageous prices charged by the VA will not happen. When a soldier signs up to defend the Christian faith, the people, and his country, all medical needs of the soldier or family at no cost to them. And there is a veterans group, Coda Vets, who helps veterans who are struggling to make um, rent and stuff because of all this expenses. So I thought we'd work with them. They're a Protestant group. And those who do the mortgage-free housing. But we will want to make sure all houses are built properly with good materials and no problems will develop.
Yeah, I mean, it's a concept. It used to be in war that if you got injured, no one could save your life and you died. But now in modern times, if a government is going to decide to go to war, they should promise their soldiers to take care of them. And the VA hospital is a complete joke. Yeah, I think it's just such a rotten institution. You just wipe it out. Probably the best way to restore it is have the government guarantee the medical care of veterans. So if they have any medical problem that is associated with their service, they should be able to walk into any hospital in the land and show their veteran card, and that's all they should have to do, and they'll be taken care of. Now, it's true some veterans might have specialized medical issues that you really need battlefield doctors that know about it. So let those doctors who worked in the VA go and be hired by private hospitals, like private companies start private veteran hospitals, and that would serve veteran clients and have those specialties that are needed for veterans because of their issues. And you could just wipe out the entire VA as an institution from that way and save a lot of money.
Yeah.
All the money that would go to salaries would go to VA benefits. And then you wouldn't have all this corruption. Because the less the government does, the better things will be done. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Natural competition and oversight. And so, because a private hospital will come under the laws already existing for hospitals, so there's no need for it. And we still should have some military hospitals. Because as soon as men come back from the field of battle, they need to be treated immediately and they need specialized centers. There still should be some military hospitals to care for men coming from battle. But as for veterans who are no longer in the military service, they should get their care just from, there should be a guarantee, you know, and totally agree with that. And what's been done to veterans in this country, just as another thing to show that the Masons milk the poor and they instrumentalize the heroism, the virtue, the boldness, the courage of the poor to their ends. And then once you've made them achieve what they wanted, they throw you away like a wrapper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just so Masonic. That is not Christian at all. To show you example of the kind of Christian mentality, when Joan of Arc won back France for the King of France, he not only made all her family nobility until the end of time, he granted her village tax exemption until the end of time. And it was tax exempt until the French Revolution. And when the French revolutionaries entered ours, France, proclaiming liberty, the first thing they did is said, now you're going to pay taxes. The people there didn't want the French Revolution, as you can imagine. So that's, you know, Catholic gratitude, taking care of the people who merited. Okay. And I would make this one exception: all the veterans who fought in Masonic wars under Masonic government. Let's not judge them on that. Let's just take care of their health and wipe the slate clean. It's the commanders in those wars who are responsible, and the politicians who started them.
Yeah. More on education. It will be required education in school to learn the true American history, that Catholics were here a full century before the Pilgrims and any other Protestants. And we also make sure they know about Governor General Lew Wallace and how he did give all involved in the Lincoln County War a pardon, including Billy the Kid, and that the Murphy gang should have left him in peace. Also, you'll learn about how General Wallace's book, Ben-Hur, was blessed by Pope Leo XIII and should be required reading.
Yeah, so an important part of restoring America to the Christians who want its liberty is we got to change instruction of history in public schools. We got to teach them the real history, not censor out the Christian history of the country, which is vast, deep, and profound. And the leaders of the country should be identified. What was their religion and why? What was their motivation? Most children don't know that Christopher Columbus came to the New World to discover a land where people could have the gospel preached to them, and to find enough gold, wealth, and riches to fund a crusade to liberate Jerusalem from the Turks. That was his purpose. They're not taught that. They're taught that he was a greedy, bigoted slave mongerer and blah, 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 wanted to enslave Indians. He was a white supremacist and blah, blah, blah. That's all Marxist stuff. Marxists should be removed from public schools, and their textbooks should, all the textbooks they've twisted and corrupted need to be removed from schools, and kids have to get true history of America written by objective historians. And we could talk even at the college level. Most of the colleges in the United States now, the faculty have become totally ideologically corrupt and need to be removed. And even at Catholic universities, most of the faculty are just completely whacked out because they're not teaching truth anymore. They're teaching ideology. And if you want to learn ideology, join a party, political party, but don't pretend to be a professor at university and you're teaching ideology. And if a university is ideologic, it shouldn't have any tax exemption, and it should be and it should lose its authority to grant academic degrees, because the degrees are ideologic, they're not academic.
Restoration of American craftsmanship. Restoring the American craft of handmade leatherworking will have a special tax-free status, and any loans they need to get all the equipment to tan the hides, to cure the hides, hand tools will be an interest-free loan. This way, these few people with this amazing talent will be back to work, doing what they love to preserve American history, culture, and art. To make sure that any craftsman can protect their designs and special handmade products, they will be able to facilitate a copyright and patent for it. This way, to protect themselves against these who would sell their design to some box store to mass produce it with cheap material.
Yeah, the craftsmanship is the foundation of the economy, of society, of culture, and of a people's way of life. And I think that there should be a general rule that all craftsmen should, since they spend their whole day working at their trade, they can't really get wealthy by it. Let them be tax-free so that they can support themselves in confidence, and so that the nation can promote a flourishing of crafts of all kinds, whether it's leatherworking, weaving, pottery making, whatever it might be, craft cheeses, um, craft breads, anything. And then the American consumer, when he goes out to buy, has excellent, high quality products to compete with these low quality, cheap trash that are being imported from foreign countries and breaks after a short time and is made of inferior quality. So I think America owes that to her own people to protect and foster our craft culture. And that way we'll build up a history, we'll build up a beautiful artistic culture, we'll add to the depth of life and the enjoyment of life, and we'll beautify our country. And we'll get to start seeing all the kind of regional variations there are and all the wonderful talents our fellow citizens have, which for reasons of pure economics they don't get involved in, and we need to give them that advantage. And that's a benefit to everyone. That will be a benefit to everyone.
Yeah. This we did a few days ago regarding Tucker Carlson, uh, what he discovered about what's being taught in the military academies. That we need to reform the U.S. military back to being a Christian army who fought for independence, not a Masonic military. These military academies need to be restored to places of great honor and learning. We will give the cadets a year off, clean out the libraries of the filth of these communist liberals, fire all the bad professors, and then begin to create a proper education system where you learn in the classroom, on the drill ground, and on the training battlefields. It is here you'll become a true Christian warriors and leaders of Christian men. We will restore a proper entrance to the academies. Only Christians will be selected and allowed to enter. You must not have any influences, attachments to the Masonic Lodge or Masonic organizations. You must also come from a very religious background that knows the natural law. This will go for anyone in the enlisted, volunteer, or even the brass ranks of the military. Those who suffer gender dysphoria cannot be admitted to the armed forces of America out of caution for national security. Any
As well
soldier,
as,
yeah, go ahead.
as well as anyone is morally degenerate, as an alcoholic, drug addict, gambler, they should also not be admitted.
Yeah. Any soldier or officer who rapes a fellow soldier or officer will face the death penalty. We will make sure what happened to Army Sergeant First Class Charles Martland, who defended an Afghan boy against an Afghan soldier trying to sexually abuse the boy, never happens again. Anyone who defends a person or stops a sexual assault will be promoted and honored as a hero. We want our men in the military to be God-fearing soldiers of Christ and be God's army, navy, and air force. Saint Joan of Arc and Saint Michael the Archangel will be your patron saints, plus the saints of the Crusades. Imitate them.
Yeah, I would add that whenever our armed forces overseas are rules of engagement that we are allowed to operate under with permission of the local government should include the right to impose capital punishment on anyone who's raping an innocent, even if it's a member of an allied military force. Because if we don't stand for virtue, what are we doing there? Okay, but you need strong penalties to prevent this kind of thing from happening. And I think any soldier who rapes a civilian or any other civilian, we were talking about, you just talked about the penalties of officers, but the soldier rape civilians should get a very severe penalty, and like 20 years hard labor. And if you rape a soldier, it should be life hard labor. And just take that example from Louisiana. What do they do with their prisons? And make hard labor camps. And you have a penalty like that, and people will be able to restrain themselves. Because you're not going to die if you admit raping someone, okay? It's not like you're, a Dracula and you need to drink blood or you're going to die. But so you need a strong penalty to wake people up and realize that there's just some things that are not at all tolerable. And I don't care if it's, 5-star general, okay? This should be the rule. And we should make it the rule for elected officials too. You have to keep the morally degenerate out of the military, out of the police forces, and out of the government. Cheap as a matter of national security for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Because even if they don't harm anyone, if they're in favor of it, they're going to lead, they're not going to be able to govern rightly.
Yeah. How to help truckers. We must cancel ethanol and diesel made from algae. Why cancel ethanol? It hurts the environment, takes so much energy to make it. And when the engine fails, it takes so much time for the mechanics to fix them. By using up the corn to make ethanol, it takes the food away from the people. No food product should be used, no food product should be used in making fuel. So all agriculture cannot be made into fuel. Now the EPA crazy regulations about the special algae diesel fuel and emissions things they put onto the trucks of the truckers and in their engines. They have caused numerous engines to fail. even my even my dad's truck has problems. All this nonsense must be done away with, and no more algae diesel fuel.
Yeah. Well, there's really no reason that any fuel made by algae should damage your trunk. They're obviously not filtering it because they just want to make as most money as possible. But we have to put people above everything else. Human dignity has to be considered superior to anything other consideration. And so consequently, we cannot dedicate food to be produced, turned into fuels. Food is for people to eat and land designed to grow. The only exception you might make is waste. You know,
Mm-hmm.
after you harvest the corn, well, that should go to cattle. But after you harvest maybe any agricultural product, if there's something that people can't eat and the animals can't eat, then yeah, you could turn that into a fuel. But we're talking about a category so small it would be totally insignificant.
Yeah.
There's plenty other ways of creating electricity and creating fuel. These don't need to do it. And so why ruin the engines over it? Why cause millions of people to starve to death by raising the price of grains?
Mm-hmm.
It's just insane, but it's extremely Masonic because they just want to make profit. They don't care how many people they kill.
Yeah.
And
By the important role of truckers with their small pay and their numerous days away from their loved ones, and the job is very tiresome. I should know. I was one with my dad, helping him before John Deere changed the rules and road truck with him on long hauls. So the truckers will not have to pay income tax if they need to buy a new truck and trailer. They won't have to pay any excise tax on it. I have heard and seen images on Facebook during the madness at the start of the COVID nonsense, how big box stores would not allow them to park in the giant empty parking lots. Now some big truck stops in the Northeast and across the border in Canada stop serving truckers. These places would face a giant fine for refusing to serve or help a trucker. You are essential to the national economy.
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, a trucker, since he is essential in the national economy and he's working his job, if he finds any empty parking lot, he should be allowed to park there. First of all, what damage is it doing that he's parking there? We're not talking about parking lots that have pay entrance ways and reserved spots. We're talking about general open parking lots. And some of these box stores who think they own 10 acres of parking lot and no one can use it unless it's for their store during store hours are just arrogant pieces of, and they don't understand that they need to serve the common good, not just their own private interest. So all the water that runs off their asphalt into the public water supply, natural or the natural environment, that has an impact too. So they need to do turn back. But I think, yeah, if you know anything about a trucker's life, they need to be tax exempt because what they're doing for the economy. We lower the expenses for truckers, then we're lowering the expense to ship goods. And
Mm-hmm.
that is good for everyone. They're performing as a whole class of people, a greater benefit to the nation than parasitical politicians that spend our government into debt, sucking up money for their buddy friends and pork-issued laws. And those people, and most politicians are effectively tax exempt. They have it all written around, they have all the loopholes, and they don't pay any
Mm-hmm.
taxes, and they get free, but they're not doing anything for the country. So I think the truckers are a clear class of people. Just like we said, the railroads shouldn't have to pay real estate tax because they're providing essential need for the country. Truckers too. Why does a trucker have to pay highway taxes?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if the highways have already been paid for by public taxes, why should anyone have to pay taxes to use them? Okay, it does not make sense. And to say, well, they're using the roads for their private benefit. Everyone uses the roads for the private benefit. So, it's not, I guess the politician says, when I'm driving my limousine down the highway, it's public interest because I'm a servant of the people. Yeah, you can take your and shove it, So yeah, the truckers, I think, need that help. And because they're already under so many hard constraints of being away from their family, long jobs, it's a dangerous job. Uh, and it's a hard life. And America is actually there's a shortage of truckers in America. Last I saw it, I think there's a shortage of 20 or 30,000 truckers in the country. So we need to help truckers.
Yeah.
It's a great word.
Restoring American shipbuilding. We need to restore the great tradition of making proper ships in America. This way, we do not need to focus on buying ships from foreign countries. And this would totally restore the metal industry, iron industry, wood industry, and fabric industry where the sails are sewn. All this would revive the textile industry. The ship makers do not have to pay taxes or any taxes on said goods needed to build a ship. Ships should not be just for those who with lots of money or for pleasure. The ships that was created and sailed during the American Revolution would be revived and built once again. These would be for educational purposes to run as a nonprofit to teach maritime history, to show how men ran the ships to protect the colonies from the British, and also show how America's Navy was ran better back then under John Paul Jones than it is now. This way, if we ever need to make ships in a hurry, like in our early years, we could make them properly.
Yeah, I mean, people don't, if you have grandparents during the Second World War, you knew that every port in the country was producing tons of ships and tons of shipping. And if you if you're young, if you're under 30, you probably have never seen a shipyard in your life because they don't exist anymore. They've all been closed down. And shipyards employed thousands of workers. One of the greatest ways to create jobs. They not only created thousands of workers on the site, they created thousands of workers in the country in those factories that made the parts. So we need to restore shipbuilding. The United States is a maritime nation, right? We have two huge coasts. We're on a continent that is far away from all the other continents by water. Um, a lot of our commerce is conducted by sea, but nowadays nearly all of it is conducted on foreign vessels with foreign workers, which is a security threat to the United States. So why not open these shipyards up again? Why not support American shipbuilding and American mercantile commerce? What's wrong with that? It's a wonderful thing. And it would benefit the economy in so many ways, and it would benefit cities too, increasing the workforces there and increasing the taxes they can raise. And but the wonderful suggestion of bringing back the wooden ships and the sails as nonprofit educational institutions, I think is excellent. There's no better way to learn character than a year before the mast. If you've ever read that great book by, I think it's Dan is his name, 5 Years Before the Mast. It's really a great way of teaching character, and it would benefit a lot of men to have an experience of like 3 months on the sea, on a sailing ship, having to learn how to sail it. It would be much better than these namby-pamby summer camps. And since the Boy Scouts have totally imploded, we need new youth educational institutions out there. And this, no doubt, if it was done, would be the cause of helping start the careers of a great new generation of naval commanders who would
Hmm.
whet their appetite on the sea in these institutions.
Yeah. Honoring the hero and great pilot, Captain Sully Sullenberger. This man who saved all the lives in the Airbus accident that happened from bird strikes against the engines and landed the plane in such a way that it would float on the water. Be finally recognized as a hero, his pilot wings restored and promoted to the head of flight safety in the Federal Aviation Administration. We need him to teach all pilots on how to handle their plane and crew as he did.
Now, I don't know if he's still alive, maybe he is, and or if he could even still teach, but it was a terrible thing. Since he landed his plane without damaging it on the river, enough time for people to get out, which was an unbelievable aeronautical maneuver. It was really, he was in the admiration of all the pilots of the world for what he did. The insurance company wouldn't pay for a crash, and so the plane did sink, and the airline company had to pay the cost of that plane that they were leasing from another company. So they tried to destroy him. They did everything they can to prove that it was his fault because they wanted to put the penalty on him and his insurance. It was completely unjust. But this is a complete sign of the Masonic system. Anyone come forward, this man was a Jew, he wasn't even a Christian, and do a great, honest, and noble thing, but dare to do it on his own initiative and not at the direction of the lodge, must be destroyed, because no one can be admired but someone who is a tool of the Masonic Lodge. And this pilot is a clear example of what someone like that suffers from the entire Masonic system when they do something great. And he should have immediately gotten, praised with the highest accolades from the president and from all government officials. And he should be made a national hero. People like that, should have their faces in public, not some of these worthless politicians. And where is there a statue of him? Maybe in New York somewhere. People on the plane have erected a statue to him, but amazing, shows you that he's a man who dedicated himself to the highest level of professionality, a man who thought first of his own passengers, and a man who in split seconds with made the right decision to put the plane down in the best spot and to land that plane. I'm sure he had never practiced landing on the water. Maybe he did in simulators. Land that plane in such a way it wouldn't break up. And no one, I think one or two people had a bump on the head. I think that's all it was. It was absolutely amazing. And a thank to all the special praise to all the New York ferry companies that came out that day and rescued these people. So, but that's really, he should be in the history books. He should be put in the school textbooks to inspire the average American citizen to excel in his profession and be heroic. Is a wonderful example, Sully. Wonderful.
Yeah, I checked. He's still around, still alive, 62 years old, so still fairly young. So, but I don't, right now he can't fly anymore, so that needs to be changed. Um, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay. And the last one is on AC heating systems. Um, there needs to be no type of list of priorities on when your AC system or heating system can get fixed. If the heating AC company is needing parts and it's going to take a bit to get the parts in, and if it's super cold out in the wintertime and wants to make sure the family is going to be safe and sound and not super cold, And if the company can afford it, I would it the, the company should do a hotel room rent for however many days and cover the meals and stuff. Same for in the heat of the summer if your AC unit goes out and you have to wait for parts and stuff to come in to fix it so that you're not stuck in either a freezing house or oven of the house. And also if there's no rooms available, somehow to keep yourself warm or cool in all of this, that recliners, couches, beds need to have some sort of special safe way that can cool the chairs and stuff or heat them so that you stay warm or you stay cool so you don't risk too much heat or too much cold.
You touch upon something that I've noticed also in the parts of the country my relatives live. It's impossible to get someone to fix anything. Whether you have an electric problem or an appliance, or you call someone and no one comes. And now, when I was a kid, there were so many repairmen, you'd immediately have someone at your door.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's just like you have to wait 2 weeks. I mean, if you have a bird fly into your window in New England, you might have to wait a month before someone comes. It's just totally ridiculous. And I think this must have something to do with the laws they put on the tax laws. Like in New England, you can't get spare parts because they have a thing called um, what's it called? It's called stock tax. So if the air conditioning man has 5 air conditioners in his warehouse that he buys at the beginning of the season because he wants to make sure he has one on hand to sell someone in case their unit goes out, he has to pay tax on them even if he doesn't sell them. Every month he has to say, what's the value of your stock? And he pays tax on it. Well, obviously he'll never make any money. Those taxes didn't exist in the 70s, and everyone had everything stocked. So
Mm-hmm.
consequently, American industry was just thriving because everyone was buying lots of their products, and before the season they would all stock up, and you'd immediately have something fixed or repaired because the guy would immediately have it on hand. His stock is, his warehouse is full. If he doesn't answer your phone, come to your house, he's not going to sell it. So everything is now, excuse my language, ass backward, and they don't have the parts. They can't get the parts. It's imported from this, and your air conditioners are made in Korea, and the parts are made in Vietnam. And okay, because here we go. This is the effect of Masonic laws. So the first thing is trades. You know, someone wants to become a carpenter, it's almost impossible. You
Mm-hmm.
have, for example, in a state like Massachusetts, you have to apprentice for like 3, 5, or 8 years under a licensed carpenter, and the carpenters don't take apprentices because they don't want competitors. This has to be broken up. There has to be a public schools that teach the trades, whether it's carpentry or fixing air conditioners, electrical work. So anyone who wants to enter a trade can enter, and they should be allowed to buy all those parts and things and not have to pay tax on storing them in their facilities so that the people can get services when they need them. Because yeah, in cases of air conditioning and heating and cooling, it could be a matter of life and death for some people. And it's intolerable that we're supposed to be the most advanced and richest and wealthiest country, and you have to wait for weeks to get your air conditioner repaired. That's just laughable. Okay, you get it more quickly done, and some other countries that would have been considered second world or third world countries. So,
Yeah.
but this is an effect of Masonic laws and how tax laws. We talked about how tax laws are forcing farmers to use fertilizer that pollutes rivers. Here's how tax laws are preventing the professions from doing their jobs, and so it's preventing people from getting the necessary services
Yep.
in a timely manner. As for furniture construction, we could talk about that. All the fake materials they're putting into couches now. You know, couches used to be stuffed with horsehair, wool, or cotton, natural fibers, or
Mm-hmm.
linens, or things, or straws. Now they're stuffed with kinds of plastic foam that are just like absolutely lethal. You drop a cigarette on it and it will gas everyone to death in the house when it begins to burn. Or this new, what's it called, memory foam. Have you
Yeah.
ever slept on a bed that is just a pure piece of memory foam. A couple of
Oh
years
yeah.
ago, I was here in Italy in 2013. The apartment I had memory foam. Well, memory foam is nice and comfortable and still until your body starts warming it.
Hmm.
Then since your body is warmer in the core than it is in your arms, the foam gets softer under your core than under your arms. So the next thing you know is your arms are like this, your body is sunk in, and it cuts off the circulation to your arms. It's a torture. I think after 3 or 4 months, I was losing my use of my right arm. I'm not talking about the beds that are composites with memory foam and different kinds of gel foams that hold themselves together. But I don't know if you ever can remember sleeping on a spring bed, but boy, they supported you so much better. And so this is one thing in furniture construction. There should be a bit more attention to materials used, and there should be preference for the natural materials. But they shouldn't be allowed to invent whatever they want to have the human body sit on because it damages you. Let's not even talk about the keyboards from Microsoft that have ruined people's hands around the world because they just want to get all those keys on a nice square thing, and what it does to your hands, they don't give a care. Whereas if you remember, I remember learning on a typewriter where the keys were organized as steps.
Hmm.
It was three-dimensional, and that there was a reason to that because when you did this action and this action, there was an equal balance in the force you had to use moving your fingers up and down. And because of that equal balance, which was in accord with the nature of your wrist, the muscles of your wrist remained in balance, because when they get out of balance, then you get carpal tunnel syndrome and all kinds of wrist issues. And that's the modern flat keyboard. A keyboard should not be flat. That should actually be outlawed because it's dangerous. But other companies don't want to do it because how would they hook a computer up to a tilted keyboard? And so there's a whole bunch of issues there. That's all Masonic thing, just make more money for the big companies and not to care about people. But if it's made for human use, it cannot be harmful.
Yeah.
You know. No, but they don't want you to sell that pickle because someone might be poisoned. But that keyboard that's definitely destroying your wrist, you can't do anything about that. Is that how Masonic that is?
Yep. So I hope you like all the platform policy ideas that we shared today in our first other two programs. And we do a lot of tweeting on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all this social media deals to get the word out about this. But only 3 have signed up, and we need more than just 3.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Christians have forgot what it means to be a Christian. For example, if you found any organization, I've founded many religious organizations, you might get 100 people that say, yeah, I want to join. Then you say, come to the meetings. You'll get like 20 who want to come to the meetings. Then other people come to the meetings and say, now let's go out and do something to promote the organization. You may get 5.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for some reason, 95 of those people think that being Christian is saying yes and by not doing yes. Okay. The modern world habituates us into thinking that if we just press that button and make a payment, we've done something. Okay, no, doing something means going out of your house, changing your schedule of the day, doing things you haven't done before, and doing the work of mercy that you've said you're in favor of. Now, I can understand some people don't have the time, so they make a donation, but in the Christian Party of America, we will not take the country back if all you do is watch our videos.
Mm-hmm.
You have to also share our videos. You can't just like it. You have to retweet it or share it. And then you have to tell all your people you know about it. You just can't share it with 1 or 2. You got to share it with everyone. Don't be judgmental. And that way we'll start spreading the word. And then you have to talk to people about it in your own town, your neighborhood, your own parish. You can't, I don't know what it is of today where people say, oh, it's so wonderful. I hear the truth, but I'm not going to tell anyone about it. There's no promise in Scripture for a Christian who doesn't tell anyone about Christ. Matter of fact, there's a condemnation. If you will not bear witness before me, before men, then neither will I bear witness of thee before my Father in heaven. There's actually a condemnation, and that's not a mild condemnation. That is a condemnation to eternal damnation. So if you keep it, you're going to lose it. And you're not really, we might have fans of our station, and I thank you for having fans of our station, but we don't consider you a true fan unless you're sharing our programs. And we've done an hour program almost every day except Sundays. Now it's been about, we're heading on our third month, okay? We're heading on our
Mm-hmm.
third month, and our normal viewership is really over 100. So those of you who are listening are obviously not sharing. You're obviously not sharing, because if you shared in the first week, then it would have gone up and would have gone up. But we still have only 100. So those who are listening aren't sharing. I think it's pretty obvious. And don't start having, don't take this personal. I don't want to cause you to start crowding or crying or pouting or anything. But if you really like what we're doing, help us by sharing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We share it on social media platforms that have a reach of maybe 15, 20,000, but those people have to share it, okay? And the people who watch it actually and know it's good, share it with some comment and invite others to listen to it. And that's the only way it's going to have effect. But on the Christian Party, it's absolutely a necessity. If you only listen to what we're talking about and don't everything doing it, you are killing the Christian Party. You are choosing a
Mm-hmm.
Masonic future, and you are doing the devil's work, because you're saying, that's great, but I don't want it for my country. I prefer the Satanic Masonic Order. Okay, it's an act of the worst treachery, because this is not a party made up to do the will of A.J. Bellman or Alexis Bagnola. This is a party made to do the will of Jesus Christ, our sovereign King,
Mm-hmm.
and made that absolutely clear. So there's a lot of traitors out there. Don't say to yourself, well, when so and so talks about it, then I'll do something, because all these talking heads, they just at it for money for themselves. They couldn't give a damn about America. They couldn't give a damn about Jesus Christ, and they couldn't give a damn about you. All they care is to have your money. And you notice here in the Christian Party of America, we do not ask you for your money. We ask you to join the party and spread the word, because that's all it's necessary. We don't need money to take back the country. We just need people to say yes and spread the word. And that, what does that cost you? But what the benefits are of saving your country. So be active, don't just listen to us, spread the word. And if you want to become more active in the party, contact AJ at christianpartyforamerica.wordpress.com and leave a message, because we're having weekly meetings. We have a weekly meeting for those in Louisiana. We're going to have a weekly meeting for those in Texas. And we can multiply these meetings and organize them. So, because we want to help you succeed in spreading the party in your part of the country.
Yeah.
And we don't get a penny from this. AJ and I are not doing this because we want to be president of America, or, that's not why we're doing this. We're doing it for the love of Jesus Christ. So we invite you to join with that same spirit.
Yep. And would really like more people from Kansas instead of one.
Yourself.
So anybody out there from Kansas, let us know.
Any other state, from Oregon to Florida, Maine to California, Hawaii, any
Yeah.
other state too. It's because we know we have listeners all over. And if you're not in the United States, or you're not a U.S. citizen, think of founding a Catholic party in your own country.
Yeah. So Italy's about ready to formalize it, isn't it?
Yeah, we finished writing our statute, and within 2-3 weeks, we should have the legal act done and our bank account open and ready to start formally undertaking activities. So we have about 70 members and about a core of 10 active members of people of different talents, and people are really getting thrilled. We did an hour-long rosary praying for the president of Italy, and that he might have the grace to dissolve parliament and free the Italian people from the crazy COVID-loving government that they have. And boy, we have had 2,600 people watch that rosary hour, 2,600, and
Mm-hmm.
we're only 70 in the party. So you can see the absolute interest Catholics have in a Catholic party. It's amazing. So, and we've had lots of traffic on our website just from that program, and it's growing. So I know that probably by the end of the week, it's going to be 10 or 20,000 have watched that program,
Yep.
because Catholics are absolutely amazed that other Catholics have the courage to go to the presidential palace and pray for the president of Rosary in public. and that it's just not, hasn't been seen in 50 years in Italy.
Yeah. And there's what, 340 million people in America. Good chunk of that's a Christian.
Well, the United States has as many Catholics as Italy. It's about 70 million. Okay, so from the Catholic point of view, it's the same size country. But there's a lot of Christians too who join together and say the Our Father for the president. And but as a Catholic party, not as Republicans and Democrats, as a Christian party that wants to restore Christianity, we're not praying that the president remain a Freemason. We're praying that he converts and becomes a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who's praying for President Trump and doesn't want him to be a faithful Christian is not praying for President Trump.
Yeah.
Anyone who's praying for President Trump and saying everything he's done so far is 100% okay is not praying for President Trump. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because a true Christian leader would have acted very different on many points. And this is what we need for all our countries, true Christian leaders. And
Yeah.
God's grace can do it.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't separate the prayers for our country from our political action, because we need to mix the two together because they belong together.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, it's not olive oil and vinegar, you know.
Yeah. So please come to christianpartyforamerica.wordpress.com. That is Christian Party FOR America.wordpress.com, and visit. If you like what you see, what you watch, what you like in reading about the ideas, go back to the homepage, scroll all the way down to the bottom, send us a message, and see.
Now,
Yeah.
on that website, they can see all these videos, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can watch all the videos we do about this. You can meet the patron saints of the party, and if you know Latin, you can read the laws of Saint Stephen of Hungary.
And if you leave a message for AJ on that website, you'll get a contact back from him, and all the help we can give you to help start a local chapter, a regional chapter, a state chapter, a city chapter of the party in your area, and give you pointers on how to go out and recruit people and how to get them together. And that's what we're doing. And the things we're learning from people in other parts of the country, we're sharing with everyone. So we're kind of like a information desk here. So it's very non-control freakish and we're not going to tell you exactly what to do. We'll just give you ideas as you take the initiative, okay? Because that's the Christian way of doing these things. So.
Yep. What's for tomorrow? Let's see. Yes. Tomorrow's show is again on Doc Holliday, where he heads west. Not west, but why did I think show that part? It's not him heading west because he's got to grow up now in the Civil War in a household full of women, of Irish women.
Yeah, and if you know anything about Irish women, if you grew up in a household only of Irish women and yourself, and you were the only young man, the fact that you would come out a strong male character is a miracle of God.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see how he handles all that tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you for having me on, AJ, for this program on Christian politics.
Yep. This is Ornamental Terrace Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.